Hello. Thank you everyone for coming. We'd like to welcome you to the Regional Wage and Benefit Forum. I think we have some exciting presentations in front of us today. And I would like to start by thanking some of Bread's partners in putting this together. I'm Marcy Allen, and I'm from the Bitterroot Economic Development District. We are 3 counties, Missoula, Mineral, and Ravalli County. And we are funded and designated by the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration. And we are charged with regional economic development planning. Also partnering with us, and a catalyst for this was Montana Community Development Corporation and Chris Allen and Associates. And the funders behind this and making this all possible is the Northwest Area Foundation. Down on the back table here, you'll see some handouts and informational pieces on both the Wage and Benefit Metric tool and also on the Wage and Benefit Metric survey, and some handouts from our partners. So I would like to introduce, we are very lucky today to have Daniel Kemmis here, the former Missoula mayor and senior fellow at the Center for the Rocky Mountain West, and also a chair of the Northwest Area Foundation Board of Directors. Daniel Kemmis.
Well, thanks very much for the introduction. It's my pleasure to be part of this forum this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to this and expecting to learn a lot this afternoon. The Northwest Area Foundation, on whose board I'm privileged to serve, has for the last 10 years roughly been committed to poverty reduction and to the promotion of widespread prosperity in the communities in the 8 states within which the foundation operates. For those of you who don't know, that the Northwest Area Foundation was created back in the 1930s by Louis Hill, who was the son of James J. Hill, the founder of the Great Northern Railroad. So the foundation operates in the 8 states that the railroad ran through, from the Twin Cities out to the Pacific coast along the northern tier. So Montana sits more or less right in the middle of that region. As I say, that the foundation's sole mission now is poverty reduction and the broader spread of prosperity, the more equitable spread of prosperity throughout our region. Needless to say, that's daunting work. Any time that you take on something as deeply rooted as poverty, you've taken on a big piece of work. And if there's anything that I am acutely aware of, and I think I can safely say the foundation is acutely aware of, is that kind of work depends fundamentally on partnership with other committed and experienced organizations. And this afternoon's forum is an example of that kind of partnership, and I think a very good example. The Bitterroot Economic Development District, we're very pleased to have them as a partner. I'm especially pleased because 20 years ago I served as an economic development specialist, they called me. I don't know what it takes to get to be a specialist, but I was with the Bitterroot RC&D, which was the parent organization of the Bitterroot Economic Development District. The Montana Community Development Corporation is an organization whose work I have deeply admired for a very long time. And so I'm very pleased that the foundation has been able to partner with MCDC on this work. So this afternoon, just a brief overview, and then I'll turn it over to the people who really know what's going on here. But just briefly, what's going to happen this afternoon is that we're going to hear the results of a very extensive survey of businesses here in the 3 counties of Missoula, Mineral, and Ravalli related to wages and benefits. We're going to have demonstrated and presented to us the wage and benefit metric, which is essentially a tool which the Northwest Area Foundation has developed, again, as always, in partnership with other organizations, which we're now hoping to make available to communities throughout this region as they try to figure out how to increase wages and benefits, and in that way to reduce poverty in the region. I think most important, and what I'm really looking forward to, is that we're going to invite what I think will be a very meaningful dialogue about how businesses, governments, and nonprofits can cooperate on issues like wages and benefits, and do it in an effective way. If there's anything that I've become convinced of in my years in public life here in this area, it is that when people of goodwill and deep experience put their minds to a serious problem, that there is a tremendous amount of creativity and ingenuity that can be brought to bear. And it's that, I think, that we're especially trying to open up here this afternoon. And finally, then, we're going to have an opportunity to think a little bit about how the kind of tool that has been developed here, the kind of research that's been done here, can be used as a kind of pilot and model to be made available to other organizations, including national organizations, doing this kind of work all across the country. To me, it's pretty exciting to be involved in this kind of pioneering work. That's something that I think this area customarily does, and does very well. But I am very eager to learn about the work that has been done here. And to help us understand that in a little bit more detail, it's my pleasure to introduce Carla Miller from the Northwest Area Foundation. Carla works with the program within the foundation that we call Connections, and she works particularly as the product development manager within Connections. And the metric that we're going to discuss this afternoon is one of those products. So it's my pleasure to introduce Carla Miller.
Thanks, Daniel. And I think all of our speaking parts here, we're all going to be saying that the next person is the more expert than us. So I get to say that at the end of my few words to you here today. First of all, I just wanted to let you know I'm very pleased to be here today representing the Northwest Area Foundation. As Daniel said, we are working in an 8-state area, the northwest quadrant of the United States. It's Minnesota, Iowa, the Dakotas, Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and we're based in St. Paul. So we're way over on the farthest eastern part of that northwest part of the United States. One of the ways that we help communities through our mission of reducing poverty is through our relationships with nonprofits, with city government, with economic development, just to name a few of the relationships that we presently have. And we do this through what I like to characterize as both financial and technical assistance. The financial part would be the grants that we provide to some of the nonprofits and communities that we work with. and that this tool we're going to be looking at today represents what kind of, to me, fits a little bit more into that technical assistance, where it's not something that we're actually writing a grant to a bunch of organizations throughout the 8-state region, but in fact, we worked with a nonprofit partner. In this case, it was Rosalie Cates and the Montana Community Development Corporation, to help them build out this great idea they had, which was, how do we start this conversation nationally about living wage? There's a lot of people that talk about this. We at the foundation talk about this a lot, and we for a long time kept kind of running up against this wall about, well, first of all, how do you define that? And once you do, how do you measure that? And so I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised with this tool that we'll be rolling out today, that not only does it help you define living wage and give you that kind of language to talk about this with others in the community, but then it also is backed up with this tool that helps you to measure that and build a baseline of data so that you can actually use this in your community and start having an effect on your local economy. One of the things that I think is very exciting about this tool is that while it hasn't been specifically used in the way that you're going to hear about today in other communities, as Daniel said, it's a pilot, but there have been other locales around our 8-state region who have started looking at living wage, and I think some of the results that they've had are very promising. There's a community in Minnesota that has been having this conversation about living wage to the point where several businesses have actually increased their wages up to this living wage threshold. And I think that's some pretty major steps for a business to take. But the thing is that the outcomes that they've been having really justify taking this step, because first of all, they've seen an increase in productivity with their employees. They've had less turnover. And I think the part that was really surprising to these companies that have had this conversation and have actually changed their wage structure is that they actually become a better business. They have there are a couple of anecdotes from communities, as I said, in Minnesota, where the businesses now are seeing that they actually have more sales and actually have a better business by increasing their wages and building more loyalty and support at the employee level. So these are some of the opportunities that we'll have to talk today, begin this conversation about what this living wage mean in Montana, what does it mean for all of our future. I'm going to thank probably some of the same organizations that we've already thanked, but never can do that too much, I don't think. The Bitterroot Economic Development District, this is, I think, a very bold move that they've taken to move forward with this, bringing 3 counties together to actually understand what's going on with your businesses here. So thank you for that effort, as well as the Montana Community Development Corporation, in partnership with Chris Allen and Associates, John Webb. He and Chris and John have worked a lot on this metric, helping to go through usability testing, through the beta tests, so that we keep making it better and better all the time. And so today is kind of at least in our part of the world, a historic moment for all of us. We've been working on this for about 3 years, and it's just very exciting to see a community embracing it at this level, and now all of you coming together to have this very important conversation. One of the things that I just wanted to point out before I hand the floor back to Marcy is she mentioned some materials back there, and we have the bookmark, and I bring this bookmark up because on the back is the website and the address for the wage and benefits metric. So you don't have to write it down. It's actually on a bookmark you can take home with you. And then, as someone characterized it, and I thought that was pretty funny, the Halloween pens that we have. That wasn't intentional, but I'm using it. I like that. What we have on here is our online catalog address, which is Solutions Depot, something new that the foundation has put together that gives you access to the different learnings and materials that we have available. And you're welcome to go on site, order any quantity of these that you're interested in, and they are shipped out to you at no cost to you. And I would imagine in the next 6 to 9 months that we're going to be seeing some publications coming out about this very work that we're doing here today. So look there all the time, see what's new, and hopefully you'll find the resources valuable for your work. I'll turn this back over to Marcy and move forward with our conversation.
Thank you, Carla and Dan. We now will move on to kind of the beef of the presentation. We're going to have Rosalie Cates from Montana Community Development Corporation give a presentation both on showcasing the new wage and benefit metric tool that Carla talked about, that Chris Allen and John Webb and MCDC have been working on. And then we'll also have the survey results from the three-county region. And following Rosalie's presentation, we'll have two panels, and this is where we're hoping that the conversation in this region will really start, and we'll start coming up with ideas on ways that we can improve wage and benefit metric throughout the three counties. So I'd like to introduce Rosalie Cates.
I like this elevation up here. It's really fun. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to see so many familiar faces in the room. How's that volume? Is that working? Closer. Thank you. See a definitive answer from the back. It's really a pleasure to see everybody here. We've worked with so many of you over the years and on this tool, and I appreciate you coming. It's always great to be working with Chris and Marcy on a project and to have Dan here, and super respectful of these colleagues and honored to be with you all. So I'm described as the beef in the presentation. I like that. That makes me a beefcake. Is that something awful? Chris and I were just debating, are we brave enough to go online and put a company in so you can see what all this is about? Yeah, let's do. I think that'd be good. Otherwise, it's kind of like we keep talking about the metric, the tool. So just to give you a little context, are you here, Chelsea? She didn't come back, Carla. I was trying to convince the Missoulian reporter that this would be a great story, and I apparently probably didn't, but but she kept saying, well, why did you work on this? Why did you work on this? Just to set the context, Montana is the 49th lowest wage state in the country. So if you wonder why we care about the level of wages and benefits, that's why. People in Montana can't build assets in order to buy loans or buy houses or get business loans or put your kid in college or even just braces, a recent reality for my family, without decent wages and benefits. So that's why we work on this at Montana Community Development Corporation, is how can we improve the well-being of the people in our community? The other great statistic for Montana is that we're the first in the nation in the number of multiple job holders. So these are the kinds of things that drive MCDC to say, well, I mean, we've been talking about job quality for as long as I've been around, but it's mostly been kind of hot air, something I'm good at. And we realized we had to get some reality into this conversation. What is a good quality job? What does it mean to offer someone a job that's worth taking? And what we did is we went out and we found out there was actually very little, there's a ton of research about job quality, but there's really very few definitive ways to make a statement about any one job that you work on creating in my business. And so we dreamed up this tool. And are we going to take a company through? I'll make one up. So this is what happens if you go to the Northwest Area Foundation website, and then you go into the, you already got into wage and benefits, so we'll assume you guys can all figure that out. And now we're going to add a company. This is how my organization uses this. Every day, right, Heidi? Every day in every way. So this is Rosalie's Fab Company. We're going to make this all up. And you can do this all online when you do it. So obviously we're in Montana. I'm going to work in Montana. And we at MCDC, we use living wage data. There's organizations around the country who have computed what hourly wage it takes to pay rent and food for a normal or typical family in Montana. And we use that wage data, and it's plugged into our database. But organizations can also choose to put in median income or 150% of median or whatever they want. Okay, so we're using that, and we're in Missoula. And what sector do I want to be in, Chris? All right, retail. Retail. That sounds good. Women's clothing for beefcakes. It's a beefcake trading company. I'm going to rename it already. I've got, let's say I have 10 employees. We'll see if I get mixed up here. 10 full-time. Sure, 10 full-time and 4 part-time. So then Chris just says, well, how many of those make more than, what's that wage level? 1131. So 1131 per hour is computed as a living wage for our area. And so Chris wants to know how many of my full-timers get at least that wage, and I'm going to say 7 of them do, based on nothing, and none of the part-timers. So then he's going to ask me, of your full-time employees that earn above that wage level, how many have group health insurance available? And let's say all 7 of those full-timers do. And yes, the employer contributes. And we do give sick leave. And asset building, that's a fancy name for retirement plan. Sure. No trade and technology training. And no workplace skills. We don't need that in retail. It's too expensive. Okay, and then now he's going to say, well, how about your full-time employees earning less? And I don't think I have any. Isn't that right? Oh, thanks. And they don't get anything. No, we don't care about them. We're horrible to them. And let's say that the part-timers aren't eligible for anything. It's probably pretty... Oh, no, let's give them vacation or sick leave. And that's it. Yeah, I'm just kind of throwing this together. I don't know how I'd really run my company. Yeah, so then this is it. This is going to score it for us. And what you see as we come out with these results, 7 of those jobs turned into 3-star jobs, or high quality. Is that a 6 or 0? 0 in the medium range, and there's 7 basic jobs. So that's all it is. That's the metric. We thought you might like to know that before we start talking about all the data. How many stars did you get? 3, good question. So the 3 stars is a high quality job under this formula. And in my presentation, I'll show you the permutations of getting a high quality, the secrets of scoring. Okay, so that's the tool. I just thought you might want to see that. And we enter all of our loans into this at Montana Community Development Corporation so we can start generating this data. And the foundation has made it possible for us to have a really wonderful web-based application where all this data is stored. So we don't have any, wizards in the back room that have to maintain this. Carla takes care of that. Isn't that where all those wizards are? All right, so I just really want to introduce John Baldridge and Jim Sylvester. You guys want to stand up for a sec? They're probably amazed that I'm presenting their data for them. That was the quickest stand-up I ever saw. And they work at the University of Montana Bureau of Business and Economic Research, and they are the people that collected all the data that you're going to see today, and they've promised to correct me whenever I mangle it. Correct? All right, here we go. So here's what happened. So this was great. We had this tool developed, and Chris Allen actually travels around the country signing up organizations to use this information and let people know it's available and so on. But one of the things we knew would be really powerful is, and it's the first thing actually, I'm just going to use the Missoulian Reporter the whole time now that she's not here and can't defend herself. Oh, you're here, Chelsea. Where are you? Oh, good. So one of the first things Chelsea said is, well, what is a good quality job? And I said, well, geez, that's why we did this survey, because we don't have baseline data for our area. We all say we want better jobs, and we all know what the median wage level is here, but we really don't know kind of what the normal is or what the typical is. So we wanted to get a statistically significant sample in our region so we could start to make some statements about what is typical around here, and that's why we did this project. We also wanted to demonstrate the tool. There's a pilot project. We hope other regions are interested in this. We think it's pretty valuable. And we want to use the outcomes of the survey to catalyze and focus you. So that's what this is all about, to start the conversation in our community. And this is stuff I always skip over, but I know it's really important. This will tell you the survey methods. We did this last summer. John and Jim did. We used businesses with at least 1 employee. We used the BREDS 3-county region, Mineral Valley and Missoula counties. They used a random digit dial telephone. Oh, all right, there's a data quibble. We'll handle that after. All righty. The sample size is 1,000, which I thought was awesome. 1,015. Oh, 1,050. I was rounding. My accountant hates me too. And that covered 23,000 jobs. And you'll see inside this data that we stratified this by the county and the number of employees, and you'll see it's kind of fun to cut the data that way. There's the sampling error. Is that good or bad, John and Jim? That's good. It's good error rate. And how about the cooperation rate? Excellent. We're in Montana. People were great. All right. And those guys can answer a lot more. Now, you saw the tool. We wanted to show you that. So basically, through a telephone survey, they asked those questions of all these 1,000 businesses. Don't you wish you could have been part of that work crew? All right. We'll go to the next. And this gives you an idea. You kind of saw this by going through the tool with Chris and I, but this is how many points you get. 3 points for being full-time. So see, there's a lot of biases built into this. When you're going to make a tool, you had to just make some decisions. So there's a bias for a full-time position, even though the research is very strong to say many people prefer to work part-time. But I always say, just pretend you're giving your daughter advice, and you'll know how we figured out these scores. So we had a bias for full-time jobs. We had another point bias for a permanent position. If the wage is over the mean level or the living wage, that's 4 points. So just like most people, when they're looking at jobs, wages really matter for counting. That's where the most points are. If there's insurance provided, that's worth 2. So you can see 4, 2, and 3, those are the highest attributes for a high-quality job. And then if the employer contributes to the plan, that gets another. Sick leave, financial asset building mechanism, that's your retirement account. Is that available in the company? Trade and technology specific skills. In other words, they send you to go learn how to run the machine that you do at your stage in the manufacturing. And workplace skills. That's that team building and how to be nice at work training that some of us get to have. So that's all the, go ahead. Oh, yeah. Oh, we really didn't make all this up. Chris is pointing out that this tool was extensively peer reviewed, and actually the original, we thought we were going to have to create everything from scratch, and we found a great model from Pacific Community Ventures in California, and they really had the framework for this. And then a whole bunch of organizations like mine around the country reviewed the scoring, tried the tool, and this is how we figured out how to do it. And then you see the scores. So 11 and above gets a 3-star job. Thanks, Chris. And you saw a report get spat out. Is that the right grammar? Anyway, you saw one come. And this is the kind of report I could give to a business owner as a result, with a little pie chart showing the quality of jobs in there. Go ahead. As we mentioned, in Missoula, we use, at Montana Community Development Corporation, we use the living wage scoring threshold. That's $11.31 per hour in Missoula. It's a little bit lower in Mineral Valley. And that calculation is done by Jobs Now. But people have the option, you saw in the drop-down menu, if they want to use median income or whatever they want for that threshold that determines whether they get the wage points. And this is the secret. This is the secret to how you get the highest quality score. People always ask us this, well, what does that mean if they're high quality? Well, you can have full-time and be below living wage, but to get the 3 stars for that, you would have to have every single one of those training skill things, and you'd have to have health insurance. And then full-time above living wage, then you just need 3 more points. So if you get the full-time and the high wages, you're far on your way to getting 3 stars. And then finally, you could have a high-quality part-time as long as it was above living wage and had 6 of the benefit points. That just kind of shows you how things shake out when people put companies in there. And then we went on and did I won't go through all these, but for those that are interested in how those things can work out. And obviously the basic jobs are pretty much hourly part-time jobs with fewer little benefits. Is that accurate, Chris? I always had to check. And this just shows you how okay, now we're getting into the data. And this just shows you what the point average for all those 1,015 businesses was throughout our region. It was 7 points. So you'll see we have quite a lot of high quality jobs in our region, but the average for the whole region is 7 points. And then this is the trend you'll see throughout this data. A little higher in Missoula, Ravalli just a little bit behind, and then Mineral really significantly has more challenges in the quality job area. And these are all non-government. You can see that at the bottom of all these slides. Now here we just divided up into the categories. So the red ones are the high quality jobs, the 3 stars. And the tan bar is the 2 stars, and the yellow bar is the basic jobs. So the 3-county average, 56% are, made those point levels to get 3-star jobs. So over half. And then another quarter are 2 stars, and 20% are basic jobs. And then you can see where each county came across there. Mineral flipped that exactly around. It has only 20% high quality, and it has 46, nearly half, in basic jobs. And then Missoula's very high, 58% with 3 stars and 20% similar to the whole county region, and then Ravalli and Missoula are tracking pretty closely there. Thanks. This gives you an idea, and I should probably have told you this. This is just going to be kind of a flyover of the data. John could and will and is happy to, and so is Jim, tell you a lot more finer details, but we just want to get the conversation going with this today. So if you're curious which industries tended to show up with the different quality levels, this doesn't mean, for instance, you'll see in the 2-star jobs, ag and forestry, construction, manufacturing, professional, that doesn't mean that all the professional jobs that got entered in when John interviewed the companies and took down their sector as part of that interview. It doesn't mean that all the professional jobs were 2 stars. It meant that if you took all the professional jobs reported and made a bell curve for that, the biggest bump is under 2 stars. Did I say that right, John? That was one of the ones I thought I'd probably get mangled. So a predominance of those professional jobs are 2-star. And the 3-star jobs are in admin and support waste, waste management and remediation. And we know that, right? We have all these environmental firms around here. Those apparently are good paying jobs. Is education services teachers? I was asked that.
No, we're not talking about public jobs.
Oh, that's right. So what is an education service job?
Education services, the private schools.
Oh, thanks.
So that's the majority of the education.
Uh-huh, good. Alrighty. Finance and insurance are up there. So that just kind of gives you an idea of how some of the industries fell out when you wanted to look at the job quality. Now, going away from the 2-star, 3-star thing, how many jobs were above the median in this data that we had? Well, I actually think this is self-evident that half the jobs should be above the median and half should be below. Is that right? Oh, so it's not above median. Thank you. Okay, so this is the wages that, of those sampled, how many offered wages that were above the living wage? And the answer is 56%. And actually our level is close to median, so it probably would fall out that way too. And again, go ahead, Chris.
This is using different data, though, right, John? This is census data.
Now, this is survey data, and that's how many jobs are above at 1131 and 1126.
Thank you.
And just the thing on the right, on the left there is just for information. I'm sorry if that caused confusion. It's just
Okay.
how many jobs in 2005 there were.
In that whole county, from the census? Okay, so that's to give us context. Are you saying that Mineral has 865 jobs, or that you surveyed 865 there?
That's how many
Workers?
That's how many jobs showed up in Mineral County in 2005, according to Census Bureau Quick Facts.
Thank you. So that gives you some context for what's going on in the counties on the side. And the title should probably say wages above living in the sample. That's no problem. So 60% in the 3 counties. Mineral again's at 33%, or only 33% are above that living wage, and Missoula's sitting there at 51, or 57, and Ravalli at 51. Thanks, Chris. And this is how many offer health insurance. So the tan bar means no, I don't offer health insurance, and the yellow bar means yes, I do. And so Mineral's got 86% not offering health insurance. Missoula's about half and half. Ravalli has 63 not offering, and 38% that are offering health insurance. So you can kind of see how that falls out. And you can see in the state as a whole, about half the companies offer health insurance. And that's probably a pretty good test that our data was decent anyway, huh, John? And Jim? Yes, they both nod. And this is kind of interesting. Now we start to cut this data by the size of the firm. And you can see there's one big takeaway from this graph. Larger companies offer health insurance. So I think that's, again, kind of mislabeled at the bottom, that the tan is actually no, I don't offer it, and the yellow is yes, I do offer it. Is that correct?
No, that,
Oh.
we added the Montana 2006
Oh, duh, okay.
compare our three-county region with the rest of Montana, just to give you a little bit of context.
Thank you. I thought I was so smart preparing for this slide and finding the mistake. And I didn't. So that's what you see there, is that larger companies tend to offer that health insurance. Again, think about that advice you're going to give your daughter. All right, moving on. And then people were kind of curious, well, what about all those other benefits on there? What about all the skill training, the daycare, the retirement accounts, and so forth? So we've picked a few of them out just to show you how they did distribute it, how they did distribute out. And you'll see that vacation is the most common other benefit, with 66% of the companies in the 3 counties offering vacation. And sick leave comes right behind it, 46%. And childcare is very rarely offered as a benefit. And then again, you can see how that plays off across the 3 counties that we sampled. And that's it. That's about all we wanted to get into with the data, just to give you an idea of what it said. And we can get into some question and answer on it a little bit later. I think our task right now is to hear from business owners and hear about how they have actually worked to provide quality jobs in their companies. Thank you so much.
So our first panel to kind of discuss the results of this survey and also to talk a little bit about the wage and benefit metric tool, and also the struggles and successes they've had as business owners in the region. We'll have 3 panelists come up here. We have Owen Robbins, and he's from Farmers State Bank, who is, I think, just recently opening a branch in Missoula, in the old, the donut place. We also have Scott Sproul, and Scott Sproul is from Hide and Soul here in Missoula, right down the street. And we also have Joe McMahon, and he's from McMahon Construction Company. So if the 3 of you would like to come up. And Chris Allen will be moderating this session. And Chris is from Chris Allen Associates. He was introduced earlier. And so the way that the next few things are going to work, we're going to have this panel, and we'll have a little 15-minute break so you can enjoy some of the coffee and snacks back there. And then we'll have another panel that will be discussing kind of overall strategy for the region and brainstorming. After that, we'll follow up with some questions and answers and more of an overall conversation throughout with everybody here. So, Chris?
Thank you, Marcy. First of all, thanks to the panelists for doing this, taking your time out of your busy day to help explore this with us. Very much appreciate it. The way we organize this panel is we pull together a set of questions that I pose to these gentlemen here to say, would you please come and talk with folks that are going to be attending this conference that are interested in this topic about what businesses are facing here in the region as they're looking at trying to improve their wage and benefits for their employees. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pose these questions back to these gentlemen one at a time and let them take 4, 5, 6 minutes and answer the question, provide some thoughts and feedback, and then at the end there'll be some time for some questions and answers from you guys, so you can ask them directly to make some clarifications or some of the things that maybe they haven't discussed in their answers. So gentlemen, the first question that we talked about when I talked with each of you is, can you talk just briefly about what are the primary challenges that you face in providing living wages and full benefits to your workers? And we'll start with you, Joe.
Sure. I think finding the quality worker is the first challenge, finding somebody that can actually do the work I need them to do. And it's usually word of mouth that I find these people. Just put the word out and then sit down with them and ask them what kind of money they need and see if it's realistic. And then the challenges that come beyond giving them their basic wage, things like vacation time, all the things we talked about, it's really tough. A lot of it based upon cash flow and wondering, okay, I have a great job right now, so 6 months from now, what's the next job? So it's hard to it's hard to project for the future in that way. So right now I feel giving them a decent wage, and it's for 3 of the 4 employees I have, it's well beyond the living wage. And then there's paid vacation after 6 months. So the challenge is really being able to afford it. And I guess that's probably common sense for everybody. But I feel like being taken seriously as an employer in Missoula or anywhere, you need to offer other things, insurance being one, health insurance being maybe the most important, and time off is the other. So the biggest challenge there for me is, and maybe it's the same for everybody, is how do you pay for it? How many employees do you have? Right now, 4. I have 4 employees now.
Full-time?
Just lost, yeah.
Okay.
And just lost one, who was arguably the best one. So there's another challenge of replacing him, going into the winter months, et cetera, and so on. And, you don't want to just get another body in there. Once again, you need somebody who's skilled enough to do everything I can ask them to do.
Okay, thank you. Owen, what about you? Maybe you could describe your bank a little bit and how many employees, and then go into the question.
Certainly, Farmers State Bank is based in Victor, where it was founded 100 years ago, and we have 120 employees currently, and that's without our expansion here to Missoula, which will be in March. That'll add probably another 15 to 20 employees, some part-time, some full-time. Right now, all employees working, I believe, 30 or more hours per week receive, after 1 year, 2 weeks paid vacation, health benefits, retirement benefits. For example, I started in 2000, and with at an officer level where I am, I have 4 weeks paid vacation annually, which is certainly hard to leave. If you go anywhere else, you're back down to 2. So, but an annual bonus that is not guaranteed, but the bank's paid it for as long as I've known about them, which is a long time because my mother worked there when I was growing up. But by the county standards, a great place to work. The challenge, I think, in providing those, and health benefits are extended at the bank's expense only to the employee, not to dependents. But employees can pay to have their dependents added to that. But it's very expensive. And one of the challenges with that is maybe expected in banking, as you have officers, you have kind of an aging workforce, and that group benefit becomes more and more expensive. And we've had some pretty hefty claims against that. We've had a heart transplant, valve replacements, a lot of different procedures all in the same year. So I know that at one point no other group would take us, but we've always extended that to all the employees, which is one of the reasons why people like to work in that industry.
Living wage in terms, just in general terms, for Farmers Bank.
Farmers State Bank, from an overall perspective, we actually pay higher than our peers. Average salaries is around $50,000, but that includes obviously executives all the way down to tellers. Our lowest starting wage with no experience in banking is $8 an hour, and after 1 month of employment, then your benefits kick in. So there are those that are newer, that are not. But right now we're hiring at really an entry-level position in our data processing center at $12 an hour.
Thanks. Scott, would you describe your business and then answer the question? Thanks.
Sure. I've worked at Hyde & Soul since 1972. That's when it was started on what's now called the Hip Strip, but I think some of you remember might have been called the Hippie Block. And I know Toby Hansen's here. I was right next to Hansen's Ice Cream at the time. And I bought that business in 1975. And it was a custom leather store. It had been called, there were 3 different names, the Woven Leather Duck, the Cow Haven, and Mostly Leather. And now you know it as Hyde & Soul. And we moved on this side of the bridge in 1979. And I think when I took over the business, it hadn't done over $20,000 a year. And We'll hit over $1 million this year, so we're pretty happy with how things have been going. But we have our challenges too in terms of employees. The retail industry, I was really glad to see it said 2-star on retail because in past documentation, I've seen figures $13,000, $14,000, $15,000 employee. It's really hard to get an employee to come to work for that, and I think that's the way it should be. I think retail and hotel and food industries are and get the quality employee you need to get. And so it didn't take me long to learn that if you want the business to grow, maybe your number one asset is your employees. And this book, some of you probably seen the book years ago. I looked for it before I came here, but I think I loaned it out. But it says that customer is number 2. Instead of that phrase, you always say the customer is number 1. And you open it up, and it's all about how you treat the employees, how you pay the employees. And managers, you do everything you can, tools, to work with the customers because it's your employees most of the time that are working with the customers. In our store, I work the floor, my manager, the people that unpack supplies in the back room, and try to set good examples and go from there. So retail is a lot. To do my best. There's 10 of us employees that are earning over. May want to have some. Rosalie, I don't know the stat. Businesses are gone in 5 or 10 years. I think it used to be 80% in 5 years and 94% switch mics. 94, oh, there we go. Wow. And 94 after 10 years. And that's a general business figure, not just retail. So retail's all about really tiny numbers. You don't, on $1,000 or on $100, you're going to make $5 or less. And so most of those retail people are not financial people, and it's a pretty tough business. And just as we just heard, how do you pay for this stuff? You got to have a profitable business to pay living wages. And as an owner and manager, you got to learn how to have a profitable business, or you'll never pay good wages or benefits.
Okay, our next question is looking at the point scale system that you saw in the presentation, and maybe we should bring that back up. Can you bring that back up, Marcy? Really love to get your thoughts on the easiest and the most difficult parts of that wage or that point scale system to work on from your perspective. We'll start with Joe. It'll come up in just a second. Obviously, full-time, the wage exceeds the living wage threshold. And then some of the other, you might want to focus your comments mainly on some of the other benefit points.
You mean as far as what's most important or what's?
If you were going to start to work on improving your wage and benefit score according to this point scale, which one are the easiest and which would be the most difficult for you to focus on?
That's a tough one. Somehow it's easy to always, or not easy, but the easiest, the first thing you try to do is just ratchet people's wages up a little bit as you can, or as you go. And it's a short-term fix. But like I said earlier, I think offering something like health insurance, which obviously nationwide, worldwide is a big deal, that would probably be the next one, to really be able to offer good health insurance, and maybe for more than just individuals, for families. And it just seems way out of reach. But I think that's great incentive for people who want to work for you and to keep them around.
The skills training's point from your perspective, is that something you're already doing?
Yeah, and there's a lot of on-the-job training in construction. I don't think I said that's what I'm a builder here in town. Like the older people, the people with more skill sets teach the younger people. It's not the guild system. you know, when you get into the unions it is, but a lot of that skills training is there. You can go to OSHA workshops. My liability carrier offers stuff. So that's pretty easy. You have to pay people while they're away. And I think the return's pretty good. The other easy thing to do is offer people autonomy, and that goes a long way. It's hard to quantify that, I think. But obviously you need good enough people that you can leave them to do their own work and figure things out on their own. But that goes a long way with people. And then
Paid vacation.
yeah, the paid vacation, that helps, or even allowing people time to go, to take off without being paid. Heidi and I were laughing, I don't know where Heidi went, no vacation time, how can you do that? But, you know, it's paid vacation time, and that helps people stick around and want to work for you. But as far as the things that are easiest, yeah, maybe skills training, but I don't know if that's the most important, you know. I think tangible things or monetary things are maybe most important.
If I could speak maybe from a couple different perspectives for the bank, I think one of the things that has been a challenge in banking is to always provide not only training opportunities for employees, but opportunities for advancement. And I know that since I've been with the bank in the last 8 years, they've worked hard in getting I guess, expanding our human resource department, getting those people in there that can provide the training, people that are wanting to improve their position with the bank. There are people that come to work in the bank and are perfectly content working as a teller, and that's great because we need great people in those positions. But then there are those that want to move beyond that into other positions within the bank, but without an opportunity to learn or to attain certain skill sets that will qualify for them for other positions. It just never happens for them. So the bank has worked hard, and it hasn't been easy to get those people in place that can provide the training and then find the time, either on bank time or outside of bank hours, to provide that training or classes or courses that can be offered. I think if I could speak just for Ravalli County as a whole, one of the big challenges for our county is really heavy dependence on self-employment in Ravalli County. A lot of people that have great trade skills and feel like, hey, I can make more money working for somebody else. And they go off on their own. And obviously in the last 10 years, a lot of construction industry activity. And those people going out on their own and pounding nails, but then they find, hey, I need one more guy. If I'm going to go get the next job, I've got to get off this job site. So they bring in one person without a real clear understanding of the responsibility of being an employer, what a living wage is, and then also how they're going to pay for that. So there's a little bit of a learning curve that those newer employers go through, and I think that's a big challenge in paying for, understanding, and then being able to maintain the level of business they need to keep those people on board and meeting the needs they have.
On the retail side, I think the market's driving our businesses to use something like this point system. It's just required. People aren't going to take a job unless they can get vacation pay now. They're not going to take a job unless they get health insurance. You're just not going to have a good employee that's really interested in taking care of the customer and just feels really good about themselves and feels secure. So we never used to have health insurance, but we've had health insurance for about the last 10 years. We have paid vacation a week after the first year, a week after the second year, and a day for every year after that. We have bonuses. We have team bonuses. We have individual bonuses. My managers make some of their money on how well the whole store does and how the employees, the other salespeople, are doing. Part of their pay is based on how do they help the team. So I look up here, retail's terrible for training, and I belong to the National Shoe Retailers Organization, and they have, and some of you might have this too, whenever we do a conference twice a year, we go to Vegas for a shoe show, and we have an educational event the day before. And we as owners and managers go through a lot of training, and then we come back with training materials. And one of my concerns is how can I help retailers in Missoula with these training materials, because I just don't see it happening much on the retail level. So it's nice to have a point system. I think everything up there is pretty darn important. And yes, the pay is the most important, but after that, They want that paid vacation, they want that health insurance, and people deserve to have that.
Thank you. Our next question is, as Daniel Kimmis mentioned, one of the things that we're going to be trying to work with through BRED is how do elected officials and economic developers and private businesses work together to improve throughout the region our wage and benefit levels. So love to hear from your business perspective how you see collaborating, or if you would see collaborating with groups like BRED, and how we might structure something that would benefit your business to help you improve those wage and benefit scores.
I think the state has started, I know the state has started a health insurance program for small businesses, and I only know one person that's done that, and she says it's great. So that's one good start. It's hard to get into that system. There's a waiting list, and, but that's great help, you know, and you know, maybe as a business owner, I'm not supposed to say that government is a good thing, but I think they are. That's what we need. You know, I look at my liability or workers' comp care at Liberty Northwest, and you know, it's a group plan. If we all do well throughout the Northwest, I'm not sure who's insured. We get a big kickback for what we paid into workers' comp, and I can use that. Ideally, I can use that to maybe give bonuses to my employees. There's some money there, so that as a group thing works well. I'd like to see on the federal level maybe a break with the payroll tax, and somehow we can use that to distribute money to our employees. Once again, through health insurance, I think that would be a great way to do it. Yeah, I don't know. I think government has a great role in it, and on the local level, it seems to be harder in a place like Missoula. But I'd love to see at the federal level, we get a little more help. And the payroll, I would go on and on about the payroll tax, because I'm not sure what we're all going to get out of that when it's all said and done, but I think right now we could benefit more from a break. Not to me as the business owner, but something I could spread onto my employees and then the community.
I guess for the bank, I guess I can't imagine what workforce developers and things like that could do to help the bank do more. I think they already do a lot. But if I could speak again, I think for our county, and certainly MCDC does a great job with this in extending educational opportunities to business owners. And that, I believe, is key, especially in our county with that heavy dependence on self-employment, to get them the skills to be more successful. The more successful that business is, the more not only business owners, but the employees thereof will benefit. And once again, helping, if I could echo Joe's comments on getting some affordable benefits available to those smaller businesses. And even for a larger business with, I get large from my perspective, with 120 employees with Farmers State Bank, those benefits are incredibly expensive to have. And and it's still expensive as an employee to purchase those for my wife and children. It's a lot of money once again, from my perspective. And there are a lot of employees that opt out of that because they just can't afford it. And opportunities for more affordable benefits, whether they're paid by the employer or employee, something that is affordable, that being a relatively healthy family for us, we have a hard time justifying that much money when we don't ever perceive that we'd ever get the benefit back out of that. And so we really opt into a major medical policy that's keep us out of bankruptcy if something happens.
Government subsidies are always welcome. But I also know that if you take a 2x4 and just hit someone like me over the head and say, look at your bottom line, look at what you can profit by having good wages and good benefits, look at the losses my business has if you lose an employee. I don't know these numbers, a lot of you guys do, but there's a dollar value. When you lose an employee, how long does it take to get the new employee trained, and how much money do you lose in the business because you've lost that employee? What if that employee is also losing customers for you as well? So for me, one of the things a lot of people in this room could do, goes back to that education thing, you know, and I guess we can't say it too much, but media and business organizations, and it's something I think about in our downtown for our retailers, how do we hit a few more people over the head and say, it is affecting your bottom line, and you need to pay attention to it. There's a lot of things in retail to pay attention to. There's thousands of things, but there's thousands of things in every business, and it's a bottom line thing.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to questions now. Does anybody like to pose a question to one of our panelists, and something that they didn't quite cover or that we haven't covered? Something you'd like to? Heidi?
I have a question for Scott, or actually for anybody. Scott, you sounded like you might be a two-star.
I'm a two-star.
You're a two-star. And can everybody hear me? I don't think I need a mic. Oh, okay. So at MCDC, we offer technical assistance and loans to businesses. And I strongly believe that if you can get to a 3-star, you have a greater likelihood of success in your business. So what could an organization like ours do to assist a business like you to go from 2 to 3?
Hello, yep. We've worked together. I've been on the MCDC advisory board. I don't know what it is. As an owner, I'm looking for every opportunity I can to learn how to do better and take care of my employees. And I want to be at that 3-star range. So I got a lot of financial help from MCDC. I know about business plans, things like that. The educational component, the training about how important the employees are, I don't know if there's an employee component to MCDC and the value of those employees. I haven't taken any courses relating to that, and that's really important to all of us small businesses. So that's what I would encourage. And do you have a program like that? Yeah. Did that answer the question?
So my question is, I wonder if the lack of affordable housing in our area affects your ability to keep employees just because they can't afford to live here based on even if they're making the $11 an hour wage.
I have one employee now that wants to buy a house, and his wife's self-employed. I pay him a decent wage, but it's not enough for him to buy a house. And I think of the younger employees, if they're going to stay with me, I don't really know how I can help them. Their wages, maybe having a consistent job, obviously that helps, and they have good references. But yeah, I think it's huge. I don't know how people do it. Even if you make $16 an hour to buy a $250,000 house, or I don't know what the average is now, at least $200,000. I don't know. I don't know. So maybe that's another way to help small businesses, by helping those people. And I know Word does it, with affordable housing, or they try to, but that's another huge challenge for sure.
Absolutely. We've all seen it in Western Montana, the increased values in real estate. Ravalli County has some challenges that we face, certainly in land development laws, and I won't go into those. But for a younger family or a younger person to get into an entry-level home, they're not out there in the market. And the problem is the land prices have escalated so much that they can buy the land, but they can't build a home. And it deters them from staying here. And one of the things that I think happens a lot, and has happened over the past years, is that there's an abundance of workforce, an overabundance of skilled workforce, and not enough work. And so supply and demand, you have excess supply and not enough demand, and so the wages aren't driven up to some degree by that. And with that in mind, more economic development, attracting more businesses to this area, certainly Rocky Mountain Laboratories, GlaxoSmithKline coming to our area is exciting, but I don't know that anybody really knows what that's going to do for us yet. It hasn't played out completely. And the question hanging out there is it really going to employ at a quality level a lot of local people, or are they going to be transplants to the area? So still a really big challenge finding affordable housing for those people, either purchasing or even renting?
Gene, I only have 9 employees, and I come from a different angle in that most of my full-time employees already own a house. And I got to be careful what I say here. But I need stability in my business. I need people committed to the business and the community. We do a lot of community things. And one of the ways when I hire people that I think they're going to stick around for a while and be committed to the store and the community is that they own their home. And that's why I have to be a little careful about it. So I try to choose people who already own a home, and I don't have that problem finding people to work in my store and home problems because we've already covered that base.
Other questions? I have one. Heidi talked a little bit about what some of the organizations here can do for you as businesses. I guess my question would be, how do we communicate to you? I mean, that's been in organizing this and other events that I've put on. You know, you guys took the time today to spend 4 hours out of a workday coming here, and you know, not everyone has that ability to take that time off. And what are tools and methods that we could use to better communicate with businesses in the community?
I know that in the Bitterroot Valley, there are a lot of professional organizations that meet with some regularity, either building industry, downtown Main Street associations, and so forth. And I think utilizing those organizations that are already in place to then carry forth your information is a great means that in most communities is already in place. And you have those people who are proactively seeking information already there.
Yeah, I don't know what a good answer is. I know the reason I'm here now, I think I took the next level, the MCDC class, because I know Rosalie. And, but I've talked to other people in my position, small business owners that are relatively new, and they say, oh, that would be great. So I tell them, once again, it's a word of mouth in our small community. That's probably not the answer you're looking for, but yeah, I think the people that are seeking it out find it. How to get more information out there, I don't know. I guess Rosalie's got to get to know more people.
Yeah, for Missoula and the downtown, it's a real good idea to work with the Downtown Association, but I'm just thinking about the health plan that the state has and how they were swamped with so many people, and I learned that from media, and I learned that from the newspaper, and if a business sees it as a benefit, and I got the information too, I haven't switched, but I have the information. If they see it as a benefit and it's in the media, they'll seek it out.
Thanks, Marcy. I'm looking at the folks represented at the table here and trying to figure out what's missing, because I think something is. We have the regulators, well, that's me, I'm not up there. We have the cheerleaders, facilitators, that's MCDC, they're not up there either. And we have the consumers, and that's all you guys up there. And the product is, I guess, people who will do work for you and make a living and consume everything else. So would it help in this kind of a discussion to have a supplier of the product you guys are using? I don't know, I guess I'm talking labor unions among other organizations. People who would supply you guys a product that is already functional and usable because they've been taught how to do the work you need them to do. Well, I'll give it a try. You want somebody to do work for you, and you don't necessarily want them to be there all year long because you have a sort of a seasonal business, but you want them, preferably, I guess, when they get there, to be able to do the work you want them to do. And you've said that you don't have a ready source of that. I'm calling it something you're going to consume because you're going to use it. Would it help you to have a ready supply of that product?
Yeah, you know, there's the temporary labor people. You can go and try to find people. Sure, the short answer is yeah. And you know, I know the union contractors. They have that pool, and if they need people for a 3-month job, they can go get those people. But I do need people all year long. It's not so seasonal like it used to be in Montana, partly because the winters seem to be less harsh and there's just a lot more going on. Yeah, maybe it would be good to have somebody from Labor Ready here saying, oh, I can provide you with potential workforce. I haven't had very good luck with those people. I think the labor pool, I think people are here, as you were saying, Owen, there are a lot of qualified people here. It's finding them and then finding people that fit. So yeah, I think it would work. It would be helpful.
Just to say that, yeah, it is difficult, even when you think you have pretty good wages and benefits and what have you. I've used all kinds of tools to try and find employees, and partly because I think retail has a bad reputation. It's not always easy, and it takes a long time for us to get employees for our store. So I had to get pretty creative. We have a real low unemployment rate. I think it came out again today, 2.8 or something %. So it makes it difficult. So all the tools we can get to find people, to connect with people and say, we got the job if you're willing, absolutely.
Other questions?
I wanted to ask all of you about advice for other business owners or people who are starting a business. And I know that some of you compete against or have competitors that don't have a 2 or 3 star job quality metric. So you're out there, Joe, competing against someone who's paying their employees $7 an hour. How do you get that contract, and how do you make your cash flow work in order to cover all those benefits? And as we're working with businesses saying, let's try to get to a 3 star, what advice can we give them to say, you can do it, there are other people out there who have done it successfully? Does that make sense?
I'll speak first because I'm holding the mic. I guess one of the things that I would say is that throwing more money at people doesn't always make them happy. I think they need to have job satisfaction. They need to be challenged, have opportunities for growth. Certainly, wages and salaries can be a deterrent, or they can become dissatisfied because of those things. But I think if you find good people and they're treated fairly on their wages, let them go to work and give them the tools that they need to do their job, do it well, and that they can see they have opportunities to grow within that business. And as Joe has said, is finding the good people and the people that fit. I think there are a lot of small businesses and businesses in general that don't have a growth plan. And because they don't have a growth plan, they don't understand when they're going to need that one more full-time employee. And all of a sudden they realize, oh my gosh, I need another guy here or another gal. And they're in reaction mode instead of proactively growing and having a plan. And I think that's where I would encourage any new business owner to make sure that they get the tools they need. They seek out help through organizations like MCDC to get skills they need to do that analysis, and use those tools to make a plan. And when it's time to bring on another full-time employee, they know what that person's going to do, what the skill sets they need, and what that person needs to be like to fit, and where that pool of qualified employees can be found.
I think what you're saying about, first, what I tell somebody else who's starting out is try to take a course like MCDC offers, because I took it after I'd been in business for several years, and I had learned most of it, but the hard way. You know, I'd taken some knocks, and I didn't realize how to calculate things. I didn't think about payroll tax or workers' compensation. I used to hire everybody as an independent contractor, and well, I found out it was illegal, basically, according to what the state said. So I made everything, got everything above board right away. Wow, and then my profit was gone. And I know a lot of people that still operate that way, and it's illegal temporarily, or theoretically. It's, yeah, temporarily, because now the state's cracking down. I've been audited 3 times this year by different entities, because there's money now that the Department of Revenue has freed up to enforce being a general contractor, a subcontractor, and I would tell people to beware of that. But yeah, I don't know. The state supposedly regulates in my industry who is truly a general contractor, an independent contractor, and who's an employee, because it gets really expensive when you're doing everything above board. And if you're competing against people that aren't, that's really tough. So I try to, if I have the opportunity to bid a job, I try to tell people right away, oh, we're licensed and insured. In fact, the state had this catchy little jingle out for a while on the radio about make sure your contractor's legitimate. And I don't know if anybody paid attention to it, but I hope so.
For me, usually my first words of advice to other businesses are mentoring and networking, because that's what's helped me the most. And one example, again, we were a custom leather store in the 70s, and so we made everything, including sandals. And when I took over the business, I didn't want to do custom work anymore. I think we're making about 20 cents an hour, and it was just bad news. And I called a business up in Bozeman. Some of you might remember Rising Sun Leather. They don't exist anymore, but they did at the time. They had a beautiful store in Bozeman. And I said, I don't want to make sandals anymore, and you guys have been in business 5 years longer than me, and what can you help me with? And they said, come over. We got this new sandal called Birkenstock. And you really should take a look at it. And, you know, some of you are laughing because you know the Birkenstock kind of turned us from a leather store to a shoe store. I mean, we're not even in the same industry hardly that we started out in the 70s. We were in leather goods, probably 90% leather goods and 10% footwear. Now it's the other way around. We're 90% footwear and 10% leather goods. So, and networking. And the networking includes joining organization. It is tough talking to new businesses because they're so wrapped up. I didn't take a day off in my business for the first 3 years I owned it, and until I realized I really needed to take the time off, and it was beneficial. And you get just so wrapped up, you don't look for advice. You're trying to do it on your own. And I think now, hopefully 30-some years later, people are a lot better about that networking and mentoring, but that's huge for me.
Baby boomers and the X generation and then another generation coming along. Are you seeing different needs for employees of different generations with regard to wages and benefits?
I guess I could speak as a Generation X member, whatever that is. And I guess one of the things that we're finding is once again, it's not always a salary. It's other things that are important to them, quality time to pursue their other interests outside of work, that their life is not focused only on their profession, that it's important to them to have time to do other things. And once again, that they find they see value in what they do, either personally or socially, that they have kind of some different perspectives that if taken into account, and you can, once again, it doesn't always come down to how much their paycheck is, but what are those other things that are meaningful to them and can really make them very loyal to a business also.
I would agree with that, and I have employees that kind of run that gamut, and the oldest employee is probably the steadiest. He makes the most. He hardly asks for anything, shows up, goes to work. And everybody does okay, but everybody wants some time off. And I think it's this lifestyle, the Montana lifestyle, and you have to try to afford that time off for people, whether it's paid or unpaid. But I think generally everybody wants some autonomy, and they want time to do other things besides work.
Yeah, my oldest son just started working with me in April, and I told him for years if he ever gets a job, don't work as many hours as I do. So he does not work as many hours in the stores as I do, but he does a great job. Just today, before I came over here, the different perspectives on age. I have an employee that's 22 years old, and I had to remind her again that if she went full-time, she would get health insurance and vacation, all these benefits. She wasn't interested. She has 3 jobs. She likes the flexibility. Someday, maybe she'll work more hours for me, but the hours are there, and I'm welcoming her, but right now she wants to do lots of different things. So we do see the different generations, and they do have different needs, and my son's not going to work as many hours as I do.
I'd like to give our panelists a round of applause for taking time out of their busy workday. I'd just like to mention, too, that this is just the beginning of a conversation that Marcy and several people in the room hope to continue with a lot of the different businesses that were interviewed during the Wage and Benefit Survey. So the different workforce developers and economic development agencies can learn how to create that ongoing dialogue and begin to work on some of these issues together. So, again, this is just the beginning of the conversation, and hope we can take some of the things we learned forward today as we are working with Brad and some of the other partners.
So now we'll just take a little 15-minute break, and there's coffee and snacks back there for everybody, and we'll come back at 2:45. We're a little ahead of schedule, but I'm sure everybody will be pleased with that. So. Aldridge would like to talk a little bit more about this companies offering health insurance slide, and so I'm going to give the mic to him.
Thank you. Thanks much for allowing me to just take a moment of your time. When I looked at the survey results, the result that got my attention the most, that startled me the most, can be seen on this particular slide. Now, the yellow bars there are 2007 numbers, and the only thing we really had to compare it to was a Department of Public Health and Human Services study that we did in 2006 for all of Montana. And so we put those up there, and the 3-county area, it doesn't look quite like Montana, but it's got a very small rural county, a less rural but still rural county in Ravalli, and then a more urban county in Missoula. And so it doesn't look hugely different than the state. And what got my attention was the across-the-board drop in the percentage of employers who are providing health insurance. Now, before that makes it into the newspaper, none of those are statistically significant, okay? It's possible that they're random due to random chance. But I just wanted to let you all know that, when you look at survey data, you just don't consider those data, but you consider other things that you know are going on, like the 33% possible increase in premiums for Insure Montana, which is the state's program for small employers. I really think, and I wanted to let people who are in some leadership positions in our area know, that even though it's not statistically significant, I think that we are seeing a drop in the number of employers who are offering health insurance in our area, and in particular, the employers who are most sensitive to price in health insurance, that is the small employers, the ones with the fewest assets, we see the biggest drop. They're kind of the canary in the mine, if you will. So Montana has been making a little bit of progress in this area since the late 90s. We may have started to see that progress peak or maybe start to tip back over. And we at the Bureau will be looking closely for more indications that that's true in the coming months. But since some of you guys are in a position to need to know this information, I thought I'd point it out to you because it was a little bit disturbing to me. So thanks much.
Thanks, John. And then we wanted to clarify, we're talking about a lot of different things here, and we're talking about wages and benefits and job quality, and Rosalie just wanted to kind of clearly define the difference between the two, so I'm going to give the mic to Rosalie.
Thanks, Marcy. Yeah, I had a lot of questions on the break saying, well, you know, you're not even talking about job satisfaction or, you know, whether there's a job ladder in the company that you're testing or not. And I actually made a huge mistake just when I started my talk by actually labeling those jobs as quality jobs. A choice that we made very early in the project was we realized we can't do a metric for job quality. There are so many intangibles, and the research really shows this. There's a lot of intangibles that play into whether a job is high quality. One thing we could never score is whether a company has a job ladder, so that a person could go from this and then gain skills and go to this position and then gain skills and go to that. And so this metric is actually ratcheted down. It measures wage and benefit quality. And all the 3 stars are for 3-star wage and benefit quality. And in that sense, it's not a job quality metric at all. And I just wanted that to be clear because none of the intangibles are on the table here.
So our next panel will be kind of to discuss this a little more in depth and kind of potential strategies for the region and just to start a conversation around wages and benefits. And so our moderator for that panel is going to be Jean Curtis, Missoula County Commissioner. And I'm forgetting my list of people here, even though I really do know who they are. We have Toby Hansen, and Toby is with Toby Hansen Insurance Company. We also have Heidi Diamet. Did I say that right? I didn't say that right, but she'll clarify it when she gets up here. And she's with Montana Community Development Council Corporation. And we also have Jim Debris, and Jim Debris is the Executive Director for Mineral County Economic Development Corporation. So if the 4 of you would like to come up here. And I'm sorry, I didn't mention Wolf on purpose because I can't say his last name.
And neither can I, so I'm going to try. It's Ahmed Spiechler. Ha, I did it. My German relatives' names were Wilhelm. It was a lot easier. So again, thanks for coming today, and for those of you who stayed. So I also serve as the president of the Bitterroot Economic Development District, serving the 3 regions, and just wanted to, even though Marcy already gave a little pitch, I wanted to read a little bit of our stuff off our webpage just to set the stage for this. So we are the federally designated economic development district for this western region with Ravalli Mineral Missoula. And that means we're responsible for economic development planning and collaboration with various parties and public sectors. We have several working groups that we've used the last year on workforce and education, land use, redevelopment, infrastructure, and business development. So today, we wanted to visit with all of you folks a little bit about what you think that we can do as a region to help improve the wages and benefit based on some of the information we've seen today, but mostly based on your experience. So I'll start out with if each of you'd like to tell us a little bit about if you think these survey results reflect what you see in your work. And I don't think we have this turned on yet. There we go.
Hello, and again, thank you for having me. My name is Wolfgang Ahmed-Spiechler. And I'm with the Missoula Job Service, which is an extension of Department of Labor. We're some of these good government guys we heard about today. And I think that was a first. I was delighted to hear that. Just a couple of comments before I answer Jean's question. One comment I had is, I'm amazed how far we've come as a community. 10, 15, 20 years ago, we wouldn't have had this conversation about quality jobs. we would have had the conversation about how do we overcome 7-8% unemployment rates and up? How do we attract more jobs? Now we're talking, and it's a nice issue to have, how do we raise wage and benefit levels and quality of jobs? And I use that term in the context you clarified, Rosalie. So quite the change in the community. The other change, we're not talking about Missoula and Missoula County anymore. We're talking about a region, which is something relatively new, and probably is a realization that economically, transportation-wise, and a few other points, we are very much one unit, one entity. A good portion of our staff comes from down the Bitterroot, and I'm sure that same thing is true for a lot of people in the room. What I saw in the survey pretty much reflects our experience too. We see professionals in a good segment of the community that does very well. Witness the real estate developments, etc. Missoula as a community has done well for a proportion of the population. Having said that, we're also seeing a large number of the population that is not participating adequately and is struggling. Hence, multiple jobs per people, per families, hence lack of health insurance benefits, et cetera, et cetera. What we can do about that in a nutshell, I think there are a couple broader avenues of how to address this. One, and again that's a very encouraging piece, is to have people in Missoula pull on the same string. We have a room full of representatives from city county government. We have development organization, economic development organization. Dick King is here from MAEDC and Rosalie MCDC. And we have business participation in there. I think that's what it's going to take for our community to figure out where we want to take this. We heard a lot about workforce issues, which is my primary concern. I think workforce is going to be a topic that is getting increasingly more exposure. Dick made the comment the other day that economic development is not about attracting companies based on cheap labor or to get jobs into this community. Economic development is not about tax incentives or any other kind of incentives. It is more and more about who's got the workforce and who's got the quality workforce and the training facilities for it. So that, again, is a fairly radical shift. And Missoula, at this point, I feel, still does relatively well competitively in that aspect. We have a good work ethic, we have a good K-12 system, and of course, a desirable environment where people want to live. So we do have that competitive advantage. I think where we fail sometimes as a community is a sense of purpose of where we want to take this community economically. Labor will be in short supply, and it will get tougher down the road. So I think the trick is, how do we increase labor participation, and how do we maximize the labor that we do have in the community to enhance productivity? And I think a lot of paths lead through education and training. I think where our disadvantage sometimes lies is we do not, at least in my opinion, have a cohesive system of workforce training and education. Give you a good example. If you go to University of Montana website, College of Technology, and I'm not trying to knock anybody, it's just an observation, you don't see much about workforce development, professional training, training and development, short-term and medium-term. You jump on the website of the North Idaho College, the community college there, and there are headings under workforce development that lead to programs that are fairly incredible. They're fast, nimble, flexible, they're for credit or not, they're custom designed together with the business community, they're affordable. I think it's a competitive advantage that Northern Idaho is seeing over the Western Montana area. We have a lot of the same things, but they're hard to find. You have an adult basic education system. You have an adult education system that is tied into K through 12. It's part of Missoula County Public Schools. You have a College of Technology that is tied in with the university system, does two-year degrees, does some customized training, although very little. Not a lot of people know that. And then you have a university system. What we don't have is structured on-the-job learning programs. We don't have a regular dialogue that happens between the business community and workforce training within a system that is flexible and adaptable. I think that's probably one of our biggest challenge in order to bring up wage levels and quality of job levels. I don't think we can afford, and then I'll quit, over the long time to try to be everything to everybody here. This place is getting too expensive. Even at 11 something, it's a struggle, especially without health insurance. So I think as a community, we need to do a better job of identifying who do we want to be economically when we grow up and how do we pay for it. And that doesn't have to be one size fits all. Dick is again a good example of you bring in a company that is called DirecTV, and it highlights a couple of things, that the wage, it's probably medium wage, it's the benefits that makes a huge difference, and that has ripple effects throughout the community. Those benefits pay for St. Pat's Community Hospital, etc., things that had to be written off before. So there is a quality there. And I think as a community, we need to take a look holistically at what type of employment, what type of job, what type of company benefits us more as a community than just looking at the short term. We're getting to a point, anecdotally, where even people in the $40,000, $50,000 and up bracket, engineers out of school, avoid Missoula because of the cost of living. And that's putting a crimp on our economic growth here. So.
I guess at MCDC, when we work with different businesses, we hear a lot about I can't pay for benefits and I can't offer high wages because I can't make it cash flow, kind of what Joe was talking about. It just doesn't work financially. And so when I saw this data the first time, I was shocked by the number of 3-star jobs out there. And when I look at this chart that's up there right now, I can tell you that the top left-hand corner, that big white section, I feel like that's kind of where we work. We work in the part that's not yellow and not orange. And it's because we work with really small businesses. And the conversation that we've been having with businesses is often centered on job creation. And so they come in and they say, I'm going to create 4 jobs. And that's great. And we don't have a tool to say, let's talk about those jobs, or even to start the conversation of, are you going to offer benefits, and are you going to offer high quality or high level wages, and how is that going to affect your long-term performance, and can we make that happen? And so I think that this tool for us is really the beginning of that conversation. And I was pretty interested in what Carla said, that there might be some examples out there of organizations that are using the metric to track job quality and then also to correlate that with financial performance of the company. And if we can make a strong case for that and have a tool for evaluating job quality, I think that we could actually see a big change in how big that white area is up here and see the orange and the yellow move up.
Thank you, Heidi.
Well, since health insurance doesn't seem to be much of an issue, I guess I can pass over that. But I would think, from our perspective in the insurance industry, we would echo the comments that the statistician from the university just made, and that is that health insurance is in big trouble, and group health insurance is in big trouble. I can tell you within my agency, we write individual health and we write group health. We've had double-digit increases every year since 2004 in individual health, and we've had double-digit decreases in our group plans. And until 2 months ago, we lost our last group health customer. And I think what most businesses will tell you is they're finding it very hard in the marketplace to find not only affordable group health, but literally find group health companies that are interested in writing the small employers. We talk about small employers in Montana, but I think what people don't understand is that in the group health realm, Under 50 employees does not make a very desirable group health pool for a group health company. And I think that when we talk about group health, until we have some new discussions and think outside the box about portability of health insurance, all we're really doing is sticking Band-Aids on this. We have a number of our customers that moved to the state plan. It was a great plan, but I think if you just been reading the media here in the last month, there's going to be some increases in that plan. There was a waiting list, as one of the earlier panelists mentioned. When we deal with our small business clients who number over 1,000 in western Montana, we never get to the benefits discussion because it's a cash flow discussion, and unless they can make it cash flow, they can't discuss it. And I think until we take some of these benefits and move them outside the realm of each employer and make them universal, we're going to have a very hard time looking at these things and making any inroads with these. It's interesting to me that as I sit here and hear health insurance being really brought up by everybody, yet it's never brought up by any of our lawmakers or our local decision makers as something they want to work on. And I don't think people understand that at the state level, we really can affect health insurance coverage. And there are some states that are much farther out in front than we are in taking health insurance and taking everybody and pooling it. And pooling health insurance doesn't mean you have socialized medicine. There's a lot of other examples of pooling this risk. And I think from the insurance industry standpoint, and when I say insurance industry standpoint, I come from the sales force, but I think if you talked to most of the salespeople that sell health insurance, by and large, they would be happy to give up their commission and a lot of their business to be able to offer a product that everyone could afford, or for there to be a product out there that everybody did afford. And that's what I would say, looking at these statistics, it mirrors exactly what we see going on in that industry.
I was going to talk on health insurance. I give you a thumbnail pic of Mineral County because I think it's reflective of a lot of rural counties in Montana. We're a public ownership. 87% of Mineral County is managed by the Forest Service. So there's not a lot of latitude in the private sector. Our largest employer is Tricon, and they have about 150 plus or minus employees. If it weren't for the federal government and the schools, our employment would be less than this reflected here. I think that graph only reflected private sector, did it not? Because we have about 1,200 and some total employees. Mineral County is in transition in my mind. It's been a natural resource county for eons. And everybody says if you're not on the bandwagon into the service sector, you're going to be looking backwards. Well, we still have an element of trying to hang on to the natural resource base, primarily the timber industry. So we're still trying to get employment up and running as opposed to some of the other benefits that you talked about, Toby. Now, I'm going to switch gears and give you another example or two. I was in eastern Montana in the early 70s when Colstrip boomed. You all remember when Western Energy really started going. Colstrip just absolutely boomed. They were adding one classroom a week when that boom hit. And everybody was just really happy until the social costs started creeping in. Their roads went to pot. Divorce rates went up. Alcoholism crept in. And on and on and on. So there's, whatever you do, there's a social cost involved with some of these boomtown ideas. So I'm just saying, in my mind, there are three things that have to happen when we have community development. One is jobs, one is income, and one is services. If you don't maintain balance between those three components, I don't think you've gained anything. So we're trying to develop strategies that address all three components and make sure that those three components are in balance with each other. I think of another example. I happened to live in Laramie for a while. They brought in a telemarketing firm. Everybody was really happy. They didn't even pay the minimum wage, but they had a lot of cheap labor in the students from University of Wyoming. And again, the food stamp cost went up, welfare costs went up, et cetera, et cetera. So I compare that to what happened with DirecTV. I think that was a first-class effort. You've got good salaries, you've got good benefits, and I applaud Dick for all the work that Missoula did, because that, in my mind, is a high class that gives more dimension to the total community than just employment or wages. Finally, there are about, I don't know what the percentage is, I've got to find out, but we have a high percentage of people living in Mineral County that work in Missoula. We're becoming more and more a bedroom community. And as you pointed out, we're not separated, we're one region. And I think what happens in Mineral County is going to affect Missoula, what happens in Missoula is going to affect Mineral and Ravalli, and so on. So I'd hope we could look at the total three county as an umbrella before we start picking on each of the counties. Those are my main comments.
Thank you, Jim. So our next question is in relation to the survey showed us that we have a lot of people that are self-employed, and it seems to be the growing sector, actually. We don't have as many big companies that people start when they're 20 years old and stay there till they retire. So if we could talk a little bit about the challenges that you see with self-employment and small businesses, also maybe some ideas for the dealing with the work ethic of people that you just get them trained up and they leave, or they don't realize that 8 o'clock means 8 o'clock, that kind of issue. So small businesses.
You know, I am in awe of anybody that owns a small business, runs a small business, and does so successfully. And I think we've heard it again today from Scott and from Joe, some of the issues that are involved here. Again, with taking that angle from workforce, even avoiding, the health insurance, I'll leave that. But the workforce, if you have a small construction company or a retail store and you have 4, 5, 6 employees and 2 of them decide that they're really not feeling well to come to work and one of them wants to go hunting and so on and so forth, you are affected in a major, major way. It is a little easier for a large corporation to absorb those kinds of things. Then the secondary issue that I see is for small businesses to be competitive in a competitive workforce market and to compete with a large organization that can offer benefits and pension plans and asset building potentially is hard enough. And now we're starting to compete with Wyoming. We're starting to compete with Idaho. The internet has made the job market so transparent that people who are mobile will move and move fairly quickly. And I think the small business owner is affected much more severely than a larger business. Having said that, probably one of the advantages that a small business owner has is to buy in the intangible part of job satisfaction, job quality, and participation in the business. I think that generation that's coming up, we call them the millennium generation. It's a generation that moves around quite a bit. It's a generation that needs to be challenged and wants to be challenged. They want to learn, and I'm generalizing here, and they want to participate in business decisions to the extent possible. As long as that environment is provided, people will stay. If it's not, they'll move on. And there are no qualms about loyalty to an employer or switching around 5, 6, 8, 10 times in a career. That's just a non-issue for that generation. I think we have to learn how to work with that generation. And for a small business owner, having heard that health insurance, at least initially, or benefits, isn't that huge an issue, I think there's an advantage for the small businesses with letting people participate, take ownership, be proactive, And with a certain amount of structure and guidance there, I think that generation provides a good source of labor for small business, probably more so than a larger bureaucracy. From everything I hear, the generation that's 22 to 30 has a tougher time with a large corporation than with a smaller one, just because they don't like red tape, structure, and being a cog in the wheel. Again, I'm generalizing.
Thanks, Wolf.
Well, I guess at MCDC, I at least have made the assumption that if you can hire, if you have high-quality jobs, that your turnover is going to be lower. And that when we work with small businesses, that probably one of their primary goals is getting their turnover to be lower. And so I asked some questions earlier that were specifically geared toward how do we get that information to small businesses, and I think we got some good answers, that we start having this conversation about job quality, and that we have the vocabulary in place to have that conversation in the same way with different businesses. And that we start gathering examples of how increasing job quality works for the small business owner and what effect it has on profitability. And then we heard some really specific great examples, I think, like MCDC or other economic development organizations could offer trainings about how you increase job quality and keep employees around, put mentoring systems in place, create formal networks. And so we have all of those ideas sort of in the hopper as well. And I can say, I think with all honesty, that every single day Rosalie Cates comes up with a new idea on how to increase job quality. And I am sure that Carla is going to be getting proposals for funding for those. And, but you know, some of them are pretty instinctual. Like if someone comes to us for a loan and we can help them move from 2 stars to 3 stars, is there a way that we can fund lowering their interest rates? Right, so that gives them a little edge toward profitability. Rosalie has been circling around this idea of housing for a long time, and how do you offer a product to employers that allows them to offer low interest home rates to their employees. So if Joe's got employees who can't afford a $250,000 house, could they afford it if their interest rate was only 3%? And so I think we have a lot of ideas, and it's about getting out there with the business owners and figuring out, maybe on a small group basis, maybe on a one-on-one basis, but starting this conversation and letting it grow organically so that these small business owners don't have the employees leaving and not showing up at 8 o'clock and all the problems that we see when people aren't satisfied.
Thanks, Heidi.
Well, I would say on our end, through our 3 companies, we have, just to give you a snapshot of who we have 10 employees, 3 part-time, 7 full-time. Somebody brought up the Generation X and the Millennium Generation. I think what we see in our companies is that there's a differing expectation from all those different generations of what that job is to them. And I would echo what Scott said earlier. We found that some of the younger people don't care about the benefits. They don't care about the health insurance. But I think the bigger challenge is keeping those people between, say, 25 and 40, who as they get kids and a spouse and a house, start to have some questions on the stability of their job and the benefits and the things that the new issues that emerge for them. And I think that's our challenge on training these people, but also keeping these people. And I think for most of those people, when you get down to it, it still becomes a quality of life issue, and affordable housing's probably number 1 on that. But I think number 2 is benefits. And again, I would go back to the portability of benefits. I think until we figure out a way to make these benefits portable, then we get people working the jobs they want to work, not working the jobs they have to work. And I think when we sit down with employers, helping them with their health insurance, and we sell work comp and we sell general liability coverages, what we find is they have to work their business around to meet the existing labor force. And a lot of times that's trying to find the people that are willing to live with the compromises they have to offer. And I think until we can help people fill in those gaps on the benefits side, it's an uphill struggle for our small businesses. Scott mentioned his volume, over $1 million. Earlier I mentioned we insure over 1,000 businesses, and I can't give you an exact figure, but I'm sure that less than 10% of those generate $1 million in sales or sales of goods and services, whatever they do. I would say our most typical customers working with a business that's doing $500,000 or less. So, that business typically is going to have 5 or less employees. So we're really working with people. A lot of their employees are support staff to help them get out of the office once in a while. And so most of those are part-timers, and that's where we see the struggle of employers to meet the needs of those employees.
In Minnow County, I think we're kind of across the board. We have seen success in small businesses as far as using electronic marketing, creating their own website and selling their wares. It's been very successful, several of them. We have small businesses, sort of a moral dilemma. I talk to the businessman, you say, I'm having a terrible time trying to find employees. And then when I do find them, they're gone in a week, or they're gone in a day. And I ask him if he provides any training. No, they don't need training for this job. But I think training is very, very critical and very important. So I think it's going to be a combination of things, but I think what this so far has done for me is I'm going to go back home and try to do a better assessment to evaluate what we do have to determine where we can move forward.
Thanks, Jim. So you led right into my next one. Training. One of the things that Scott talked about this morning was, or earlier this afternoon, was that he had an opportunity to go to some training that he thought could benefit other stores in town. So I thought maybe we'd talk about some ideas of how do we share the wealth and knowledge that we have, maybe with, that might be selective to a certain sector of the economy, or it could be more general, like some of the classes that MCDC and some of the other economic development organizations offer. Things like, we talked about also things like the fact that you need to pay for workers' comp, and when can you hire somebody and consider them a contractor, and when do they become your employee, and all of those kind of things. So if you have any ideas on training issues.
It's probably one of my favorite topics. Recent examples, Stimson Lumber lays off over 100 people. A lot of those folks have been with the company for quite some time. What do they do? There are a number of facilities in this community offering training. There is training just to make a transition possible into a 2-year or 4-year college system that starts with literacy, basic study skills, et cetera, offered through adult education, Dickinson Lifelong Learning Center. Some people went and said, I need a job real quick. What is my best bang for the buck for training? Sage Trucking, for instance, good example. A few weeks of intensive training there, you're on the road, you're making good money. That's a possibility. Some people went straight into College of Technology. There are other schools around town, private and public, that provide training. To pull it all together takes, right now, someone who's knowledgeable in what all is available in this community. And I think one of my beefs has always been there is no clearinghouse, there is no structured way of providing training. There's also no clearinghouse where you can go as an employer and say, my retail employees will get and need some more training on how to sell shoes, for instance. Why should we do that just for one store here in this community instead of finding a way to get the word out and have other retail and wholesale outlets benefit from the same training? It defrays the cost, and it goes around in a much more systematic way than what we're doing now. I think this conversation can be the beginning of one to say, what do we need to do as an area, as a region, to put some structure into workforce training, make it available, make it public, and open it up to input for those that are needing the training, meaning the business community. I think this forum can probably go a long ways. There is training available for new employees, workforce training grants out of the Department of Commerce. There is training available in certain regions of the state for existing employees to upgrade skills, also known as incumbent training. There is a lot out there. There's on-the-job training supported by various sources of funds. People in general are not aware of that. And it was interesting, the comment that Joe made, I know Rosalie, that's how I know. And I think we do a lot of that in the community, and we lose a lot of efficiency that way.
Well, Wolf kind of stole my thunder. That was what I was going to say too. That I think that it needs to, there needs to be some sort of clearinghouse. It is really tough to figure out who's doing what and where the trainings are offered. And I think Scott said earlier that he was a big fan of subsidies. I'm a big fan of subsidies. And I think that as the conversation changes from job creation and quality, that we can probably talk about government funding going into trainings and being available to everybody and being put in some sort of clearinghouse that we know how to access them. And I think for our part at MCDC, one of the things that we can do, and I think I heard this from the earlier panel, is just have job quality be on the table as one of the things we're working toward in our individual trainings, and make sure that as we work with individual business owners, that they're aware of all of the types of trainings that are available for each of their positions.
I would say on our end of things, I think we need to attack the problem of training really by starting at the top with the business owners themselves. And I can tell you a very typical scenario for us is to get a phone call from our customer, our potential customer. They're down at the city hall or at their courthouse getting their business license. And they knew they needed to get a business license, and they go down there and find out, well, you have to have insurance. And so they call us and they come down, we'll write them a quick policy, and they go down, they get the city business license. But, you know, we've really sent that person out into the world not knowing anything more. And I think there's a great opportunity there to teach business owners. You know, we make somebody go down and take driver's ed to get their driver's license, and I think we could do the same thing with business licenses. And if we want to have enlightened businesses that offer benefits out there, we have to start by having enlightened business owners and putting them through some training and teaching them about unemployment, your payroll taxes, work comp. Over a third of our new work comp customers, and we're an agent for the state of Montana, come not from the people themselves, but comes from state fund because they've had to discipline somebody or they've had a complaint on a business about their employees not being covered by workers' comp. By and large, I think we find that people were not trying to do anything underhanded. They weren't trying to break the law. But nobody ever sat them down and really explained all the functions of a business, all the responsibilities of an employer. And I think that's something I can tell you myself, I've been a small businessman for over 20 years. I learned the hard way. I learned by finding out what it was to pay payroll taxes. And sometimes, I can tell you initially, I found out after the fact, not before the fact. So I think that's where we need to attack it, and we need to educate the people at the top, because it's always a top-down process. And if we educate the people at the top, then we're going to have people that have gotten their immediate needs out of the way. They're in compliance. Then they can start thinking about things like employee benefits, on-the-job training. I've never dealt with Wolf, but my company's used the on-the-job training program. We've had 3 people. 2 of them have gone on to careers in insurance. In the insurance business. They both make great wages, started out at $8 an hour, and they're both over $50,000 a year. That's a great program. Every time I have a customer that wants to put on people, I bring up on-the-job training. I'll bet 1 in 10 have heard of it, know what it's about. You explain it to them, that's a great idea. It allows them to invest in that new employee. It gives that new employee time to learn that job, and I think it's a great program.
We have 12% turnover in our construction industry and 23% turnover in ag, forestry, fishing, and recreation. Those are the categories, which simply says we do have quite a high turnover in employees. But that's no excuse for not training. And we simply have not taken advantage of the training that's available. So from this day forward, I'm going to give that a lot higher priority than I have in the past, trying to facilitate it, make people aware of it, try to get them connected to it, so we'll move forward if we can.
Thank you. Find my other one. So one of the things that I know Missoula County is dealing with is the fact that we have a lot of people that are the baby boomer age that one of these days are going to leave. The only way we keep them is because they can't afford their insurance. So it isn't the only way. We have some people who really like to continue to work, but there are a number I know that are, when they look at whether or not they can afford to retire, insurance is the one that keeps them there. So any ideas of what we can do to work on as we have that huge turnover that we expect to happen with over the next few years? You know, how do you're going to lose institutional knowledge, you're going to lose people who did start out in the industry thinking, well, you know, I work for the county and I'll retire from the county or the telephone company or whatever. So how do we deal with that?
Well, I don't know if I have a good answer for this. I have a random thought, and that's about it. We know that as we lose people, we're also gaining retirees who are coming into these 3 counties, and they have a ton of knowledge. And we occasionally sort of trip across them, and they say, you know, I was the CEO of whatever, or the CFO, and here's how I did it, or I'm invested in this, or I'm doing this. And there's a ton of entrepreneurial capacity that we believe is coming into the state. And I think that we are now charged with finding those people, and if they're going to be here as retirees, being part of that knowledge transfer back into businesses. And so setting up some sort of networking, I don't know even what it is yet, but some sort of network to get those people involved as a mentor to people who are who would like to have all their knowledge. So.
I'm going to say something and somebody can correct me. I'm sure that's got more smarts than I have. I mentioned we do have quite a turnover. 37% of our students in Superior School are transits. To me, that's just, I just cannot believe that. I cannot fathom that. And I was trying to find out why. Now, here's what I was told. We have a welfare system that has a 5-year window in it. We have agreements of reciprocity with Idaho and Washington. However, in Montana, you can only get 3 years out of that 5-year window. So what are the recipients of that program? They do 3 years here, go to Idaho for the other 2. They start in Washington 3 years, move to Montana for 2 years, or vice versa. We have a revolving door. You cannot believe how many recipients come in and out of our county. And the point I'm making, if that's so, then I would say we got to look at policies that are established that create these kind of problems, if that's true. So I would say look at policies as relates to employees to see whether or not there are policies that have adverse effects on the stability of that enforce.
You know, I think we have to be creative with what we do, and I think we have to offer non-traditional ways for people to allow participation. That goes, like on the baby boomer end, for example. Teachers is a great example. There are quite a few teachers that have taught for 30, 35 years, and they'd like to cut back. We're forcing teachers out of the system by saying you either work full-time or you don't work, instead of a mentoring process and a part-time process that brings a younger generation up, teaches the skills, mentors, and makes a smooth transition. We have a program next door to us called Experience Works. They deal exclusively with people 55 years and older. A lot of those folks are forced back into the labor market due to maybe a death of a spouse and having to generate some income. We are not systematically tapping into that particular part of the labor force. People are retired, but they volunteer a lot. They have the energy, they have the smarts. Why don't we tap into that more systematically again in the labor force? On the other side of the equation, whether we like it or not, I think we need to bring people into the labor market that traditionally have what we call nicely in the field barriers to employment. Barriers to employment can be disabilities. There are a number of programs there. People are very capable of working with some supports. I don't think we do enough to ensure participation there. We increasingly see folks that have felonies in the background, drugs, maybe clean totally, and we don't look at it enough to say, is there a potential, at least partial, labor force there that we're currently not utilizing. We have people that are lacking literacy skills that may not have made it through high school, but 10, 20 years are ready for their GED and supports. Those folks take a lot of time. And I know that from personal experience, with training, with mentoring, with case management, we can make some very productive changes there. I'll give you a good example. We wrote a grant a couple of years ago working, bless you, with the Missoula Dental Association and the dentists in town to address a crying need for dental assistants. And we're not talking the 2 or 4 or 6 years of university, hygienist, et cetera, but dental assistants. The training for that, a lot of it is on the job. And if you find dentists that are willing to work with you, and quite a few are in Missoula now, you can train somebody who may be in a part-time, low-end job to bring those skills up, bring the wages up, have benefits, free dental care, and have those folks participate in the labor force. Again, we need a structured way of teaching those skills, including workplace behaviors, workplace socialization that needs to be there, but we're seeing such a dire need for workforce in general that I think it behooves us to tap into just about every aspect of the labor market.
I guess, again, I would go back to portability of benefits. When we're dealing with a customer looking at retiring, and we have a lot of people come to us and say, I'm 55, I'm 58, I've worked for the county, as Gene said. We just had somebody 5 months ago come in and with that exact scenario, and when we sat down and looked at what it was going to cost him for individual health insurance, he changed his mind, came back and said, I'm going to work another 3 years. That's what I figure we got to put away to take care of us. As I look out in the crowd, I don't see a lot of people, but a lot of people know the magic age of 64 and a half, 65 is when you go on your Medicare. That is a very tough time between the time ages of 55 to 65 to pay for your health care and to allow you to make those decisions, because what we see are people in those age groups wanting to go to a job that's maybe more fulfilling than what they've been doing, or they want a change of pace. But what blocks them from doing that much of the time is having to satisfy some of those basic needs like health insurance, their 401k they can't take with them. And I think if we can make that easier, we're going to make it a lot easier for those people to stay in the workplace and do maybe what they've been doing. Maybe all they want to do is go to part-time, or to mentor new people in that area.
Thanks, Toby. So one last question, then we'll see what the audience has, is are there some partners, and some of you have mentioned some of them today, but are there some other partners, organizations that we should be bringing to the table to help look at strategies and solutions? I know that you talked a lot, Wolf, about the partnering that's needed to be there in regard to workforce and education, but any other ideas?
Good partner, I'll give you some idea. Vocational rehabilitation works with folks that have sustained some form of injury, go through a rehabilitation process, including education. I think there's a good partner. Missoula Housing Authority is another good partner. Housing, whether we like it or not, is becoming a huge issue here. And I believe that housing needs to sit at the table. We have formed a community management team. It's actually a group of roughly 20 different organizations in town that sit around the table every other month in a formal way and just share information so we can keep up with what's available in the community. And there are a lot of services available here. The biggest challenge is keeping on top of them. That in turn has fostered a lot of internal or informal one-on-one contacts between organizations. So if we get a particular issue walking through the door on the telephone, we have a pretty good first idea of where to turn to if we can't serve that individual.
Well, I think when we look at partners, we're looking at the usual suspects. But I think that we also can possibly break it down. This is a great start, and we've talked about a lot of different things that we can do with healthcare and with training and, potentially with offering 3% home loans. And I think as we talk as a group about what the strategies are to increase job quality, that we can look at the individuals that need to be at the table for each one of those. But I don't think we're going to see any big changes on who those people are.
Well, I think networking is a big part of that because I really believe getting the information out to the people who are the decision makers would solve a lot of our issues that we have today, because I think there's a lot of these programs that are underutilized just simply because people don't understand they're there. And I know that's always that's a very hard thing to do, because you think you've spent the effort, you've spent the time getting that out there, and it still hasn't reached the people that need it. And I think that's where we need to work with networking with the contacts, whoever's dealing with these small business owners, these employees day to day, just to get that information out there.
In addition to the agencies, organizations represented here today, as far as Mineral County goes, we don't have a good relationship with our school system as far as creating adult basic ed and adult education and community ed. So that's one of the areas that I'd like to focus on.
Thanks, Jim. So, are there any questions from the audience?
Thanks, Kevin.
Just wanted to see you run across the room there. I grew up with a father that taught vocational agriculture, and I heard vocational mentioned once in this panel, and that was vocational rehab. Our schools have shied away from vocational education and the skill sets that brings. I went to school and became a vocational agriculture teacher myself, and it wasn't so much the fact that you turned out the best welders or the best mechanics or the best of anything, but what the kids did, the young people did get, was 8 o'clock does mean 8 o'clock. They do want someone they can leave the cash register open with. They do want someone that they know can sweep the floor if they tell them to do that. Is there any support for school districts or anything like that beyond the old traditional subsidy that we used to get? There is no real vocational program in Mineral County, and for people that want to come in for training or from Missoula College of Technology or whatever they are, they have to have a car that functions. They have to be able to afford $3 or $4 gas. They have to be able to get back and forth. They have to consider daycare. There's all those kinds of challenges because we don't have anything quote unquote locally. And I guess it's a fairly large thing to get your arms around in terms of trying to get them access to some way of creating a way for them to make something different. And I guess if there was just anything that was out there that has potential that we could offer people, appreciate hearing about it.
And I guess I would put Kevin's question out to the audience too, because I think we have a lot of knowledge here. No. Do we have other questions from the audience?
Let me take a stab at that. Looking at Kalispell, Kalispell is a good example up there. There's a Flathead Valley Community College up in Kalispell. It is not part of the university system as we know it. And over the years, and it's not that old an institution, over the years it has evolved fairly rapidly into a workforce development organization, if you will. It has outreach places. There's one in Libby, for instance, and it's starting to emphasize e-learning. Again, the model that I see most successful there is the one in North Idaho. I mean, they're eating our lunch as far as workforce development and education is concerned. They're offering anything from e-learning to two-year degrees to custom-made on-the-job training programs that are structured with a business, and they have outreach sites in various communities around Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, that area. I think that's a good model. How do you fund something like this? You know, I could picture workforce training grants that go directly to Institute of Learning, subsidizing, here's that word again, or supporting people that want to tap into educational opportunities. I think that is maybe a role that the state should take in conjunction with communities. What we tend to do in Missoula, and is probably not popular to say, is when there's a desire to create something similar, down the Bitterroot, for instance, a good example, we start arguing, you know, which umbrella entity it needs to fit into, instead of looking at the merit of how can we combine the two and make it work for everybody in the region. And I think that's a shift that we need to make. Instead of thinking them versus us, how can we in the region cooperate? And it will take both. It takes a University of Montana system, absolutely, and a vocational component, but it also takes an adult education piece that is short-term, it takes an e-learning piece, and it needs to be flexible, and it needs to be very nimble.
Other questions?
I don't know if this is a question or more of a commentary. I think it's important, as I think, Toby, is that your name? As he alluded to, that I think it's important that business owners realize the value in training their employees. That somewhat of a cold-hearted way to look at an employee is a unit of production. And if you can increase the capacity of that unit of production, they produce more, you make more. And if your competitor does it, maybe that will wake them up to have to do it. But to get that information to those business owners and help them see the bottom line value of increasing the skill sets of their employees and getting those people, once again, they'll be more satisfied, they'll make more, the business makes more, to help that happen from the top down, as you alluded to. What are the ways that the four of you see that that can get out to those business owners and, I guess for lack of a better word, inspire them to seek training opportunities for their people? What are the ways that business owners can be inspired to seek training for their employees?
I'd like to give that question to Dave Glazer, our Small Business Development Center Director. Because it's really, at MCDC, he works with small businesses, he provides trainings, and I think he has a lot of great ideas.
Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Heidi. Well, at the end of the day, the thing that motivates a small business person to find on-the-job training for their employees is the bottom line. And it's my job to convince people that, in fact, on-the-job training is going to equate to employee retention and increased bottom line. Does that answer the question? Everybody feels pretty happy with that? I feel pretty happy about that.
Well, maybe this picks up on that same theme a little bit. Here, we've seen some resources put into trying to develop information on a region-wide basis, try to figure out what's going on, thinking that the more people know what's going on, the more intelligently they can act. So we've heard Scott, for example, and others here argue that that treating your employees well in a variety of ways, in fact, can influence the bottom line. But it's sort of counterintuitive. right? And it's easier to think that that the way to affect the bottom line is just to keep costs as low as you can. So where I'm going is, are there other kind of metrics that we might be thinking about that would help inform employers about why investing in employees in this way would be a good thing to do? Because what I'm hearing here is that most employers are pretty smart. If they see facts that lead them to believe that acting in a particular way is likely to produce more profit, then they'll act in that way. So are there ways that we as a community, government, nonprofits, foundations, could help generate that kind of information, and what would it look like? And I guess that's a question for anybody, including the panel.
I'll take a quick stab at it. I know that we've been working with a client who actually has this exact question, and Dave's working with him right now. And he knows that he has high turnover, and he knows that he's having some profitability issues, and he knows that if he could keep his employees there, he would make more money. And that's sort of the end of what he knows. And so then what's the next step? And his next step was to come to Dave and say, what's the next step? And I think we're in agreement that the trainings are all over the place. And so it's difficult for us to sit down and say, okay, here are your 12 employees. What are all their weaknesses? What would be the best thing for them to learn? What do you need to do to keep them here? And so it's a bigger process than that, and it's a conversation that we haven't even started having with the people that come in. And I think it's going to take some time and some thought and possibly be sector specific to design something that we can put out there that says, okay, if you're in this industry, here are some things that you might want to think about in terms of training and turnover. Because I do think that people are aware of this, but when you get up in the morning, you think, well, I need to make some money, and I need to make sure all my employees get to the right place. I need to make sure my customers are happy. Then I need to design a training program. That it's just an overwhelming task, and so we need to put all of the pieces in place to make it easy.
Heidi, I have a question for you to add on to that. Do you think that this informational source is just workforce training, or do you think it's a larger thing that's business related? If you're in this economic sector, these are your business resources, and training's included as part of that.
Well, I think it's the work that everybody actually has a piece of it. When Joe got a lot out of Next Level, the guys that the client I'm talking about isn't going to benefit from Next Level, and it's not in my head even where those trainings are, and so I don't know.
I'll take another quick stab at it. I think it's a very differentiated issue. It's a good question, Dan. There are some national models out there. How much does it cost to lose an employee and replace them, et cetera? I think that depends an awful lot on the industry. You have a company like, again, DirecTV that has a fairly large turnover, but it's industry specific. And the cost of bringing additional people on, there's a training class. They can fit 20, 30 people into a training class, so there's a specific cost. But they're very comfortable with a relative, as we would consider, relative high turnover rate. For their industry, they're doing very well around here. Joe's probably, if he had a 50% turnover rate every year, he probably wouldn't be happy. So I think the strategies would have to be industry specific, size specific. We talk a lot about employers of choice, and what makes a DirecTV an employer of choice may be entirely different from, a Costco, for instance, or a Pyron Technologies, just to pick a couple. But I think it's a good question that needs to be addressed in conjunction with individual business owners. And let me just throw this out. We've started a little while ago a business expansion and retention effort where we visit with businesses and have a structured conversation with them to go into opportunities, challenges, et cetera, and then try to find solutions if there are any kind of issues like turnover, by plugging the business into the appropriate resource. And I think that that targeted, focused approach may be the best one rather than a global approach. In conjunction with a lot of partners.
That program's called BEAR, by the way. And there's one in all 3 counties.
How would each of you envision this conversation continuing, and how would it benefit the work that you're doing? Could you speak to that a little bit? How do we continue this conversation after we leave this room? In what way would that benefit you, and how would that best be structured to complement the work that you're doing?
I really think this afternoon's been a real eye-opener for me. The Mineral County Economic Development Corp has a board of local citizens, and I'd like to take this kind of data to them, and they have as good a pulse as anybody on the communities and the employment and the industries. And I'd like to do some brainstorming at home to see if we can come up with some programs that will address some of the issues that have been raised here.
Yes, I'd like to see the organizations that are here further the conversation with a goal for their organization or for their area, and then come back together, possibly with a facilitator of BREAD, to just vet our goals and try to put them together and see as a community or as, a region, what we could do to try to get the top priorities in play in some sort of planning and try to reach our goals soon.
The document that I believe Marcy put together, sets the Comprehensive Economic Development strategy, I think identifies a lot of the key partners in there. What can happen, if it gets too large of a circle, things tend to bog down a little bit. I think we should continue to find specific projects for that group and find the appropriate stakeholders for that. The topics range from infrastructure, sewage, housing, workforce, et cetera. They're all over the place. There are work groups in place, and I see this as kind of a checkpoint to say, here's the document, here are some of the stakeholders involved, some of the working groups are already in place. Let's take any kind of feedback from here and bring it back into the work groups. The other thing I'd love to see more of is business participation in there. We have a representative from the chamber here, for instance. I'd love to see more private sector input into this process rather than a lot of alphabet soup of organizations.
How do we do that in your mind? Well, how do we get the business participation?
Gary?
Take a stab at that one. I think there could be a lot of inroads made there if these organizations that were here today looked at the points of access between these organizations and businesses. And, I look as a banker, an accountant, the professionals that service businesses, I think, would be a great resource, be they insurance agents. Like I say, getting to those people to disseminate this information to their customers, I think, would be a huge step forward, because I can tell you, as both a small business owner and an insurance agent dealing with people and their business needs, it's very hard for a small business owner to take 5 minutes out of the day to sit down and give you that undivided attention for 5 minutes and really process what you're telling him. You're bombarded with so much information, and you have to weed your way through it to figure out what's important that day and what's not. And I know that there's a lot of these programs that cross your desk, and they look good, and they're very interesting, but to fully understand what's being offered, I can tell you that when we talk to customers about on-the-job training, they have to ask you 3 times, this isn't going to be money out of my pocket, right? No, they reimburse me, and maybe after the 4th time that you explain it to them, then it kicks in, and they'll call job service and check into it. But I think sometimes a lot of these programs are out there, but people don't fully understand what they offer or what the benefits are to them. That probably answers the question earlier, what can you do to motivate employers? And I think that's get them to understand what these really can do for them.
You know, with regard to the motivation of employers, I think about employers are really the same as employees. They all have different needs and different reasons for doing what they're doing. I know that specifically in a business I was involved in, I was not bottom line oriented. I knew that if I had good customers that were satisfied and good employees that were satisfied, the bottom line would come along with it. So when I think about what could we do to motivate employers, possibly this rating system in specific different terms out to the public could be of benefit. In other words, a motivation for one employer to move up one level as it's known to the public would be of benefit. So it's a rating system on the employers out there that is visible, something that I know a lot of industries do within themselves. They can be a 5-star dealer or a 4-star dealer or whatever your rating system is within your own industry, but it's not gaining you anything in the community. So it's a very sensitive issue as well. I know the Missoulian tried that a while back, and it was more of a personality thing, and it was discounted considerably, but you know, it looked good if your name was the top, in my case, the top tire dealer in Missoula. It was good press for me, and it felt good more than the bottom line. So something that can be a motivation publicly, not bottom line oriented.
So Gary, you would see this more as a voluntary thing, though, that your tire store, when you had worked in the tire store, would say, you know, I'm going to do this because I think it'd be good for the public to know that I treat my employees and I'm a 2-star and I'm working to a 3-star, or maybe I'm already a 3-star. So more of a voluntary thing, not that somebody decides to put out a blacklist, right?
That's where the sensitivity comes.
That's right, sensitivity.
I was hoping some union member was going to speak.
I've just been a little slow because of a head cold. Just one quick point. There are a lot of things that are real good are being talked about here. I think I did want to speak up for labor unions as one of the greatest poverty reduction programs that's ever existed, historically and currently. But what has, I think in part of the puzzle, what we're looking at here is also the employees, not in just being passive consumers of training, or and actually I think you were getting at, to your question, some about vocation. It is about being a part of, feeling a part of the economic well-being of this community. And I'm a union representative, represent the 1-star category of workers generally. And I know that oftentimes when an employer does not want to, is the bottom line kind of guy, not like the employers here I'm impressed with, but there are employers out there who don't understand that taking care of employees, number one, in fact, they work with that, and they work with high turnover, and that is part of their business. There's a difficulty, people sticking around for those kinds of jobs, and we find that in my work and in our work we do as unions is that employees who are engaged, who are educated about different programs, we actually end up sometimes educating the employer about what's available, because in the end, I mean, employees want to be paid right, they want to have benefits, they want to enjoy and be a part and have a say on the job of what it is their job is about, and employers want, I think by and large, the same thing. And we have, a situation here where at times working in collaboration with an employer, I'm thinking a couple examples where there was a lot of resistance at first, and then as things developed through the years, that the employer really gets to see and understand the struggles their employees go through and wants to do a better job. And I think this is kind of where the table gets set for some of these programs. I just wanted to mention that, and also too that if our economy is becoming more service-oriented and more tourist-oriented, I would submit, we don't want to get into the situation where they are in the Flathead, where they're importing workers from overseas who are willing to work at low-wage jobs, where our new generation of workers aren't willing to put up with that. And so we've got employers asking the government for special work programs so that women from the Philippines can come in and work in hotels or work as nurses and things like this. So more of a comment than a...
Do we have other questions?
I think the cookies hit bottom. I'd like to take this opportunity, though, to thank the Northwest Area Foundation and MCDC and Chris Allen and Brad for bringing this tool to us. I think it really has been an eye-opener and make us focus on jobs and benefits and how much that is more important than just number of jobs and making sure everybody's employed, because we all know that, as was mentioned earlier, we have more people that have more than one job than most places. Part of the reason our numbers are not saying that we have people out of work, it's because they all have plenty of work. Any other questions before we wrap up for the day? I'd like to thank the panel.
We're not done.
Marcy's going to do the wrap.
I'd like to thank the panel. What? Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Oh, we still have Rosalie is going to summarize a few of the happenings today, and then we'll let you all go. Rosie's going to be an issue.
Very simply. Is there anything left to be said? Any burning comments or thoughts you had that you think we missed? We brought it up at labor. Thank you for talking about that. Did we say anything about bear, Tom? Are there any things?
There's always more to say about bear than beef.
I got the beef. All right. I would really welcome it if you felt like we had left out anything that needed to be talked about, but I felt like that Q&A kind of wrapped it up.
I guess a few things. I posted the PowerPoint presentation up on the BRED website, which is just bredd.org. And I will ask any of the participants that were here today if they would mind that their information is posted and their contact information if people had further questions for them. And I will also post that on our website. But I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to again thank the Northwest Area Foundation and Dan Kemmis for being here. And I think this is a great start to a conversation on a regional level.
That's all I was going to say. Thanks a lot for coming.